Welcome to the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. I'm Greg Schinkel. Today is a special edition episode. That's where I just share some ideas without a guest to interview in hopes, of course, that it'll bring some greater success and insights for you and your team. And today's topic is all about development. Now, in a lot of employee surveys, one of the things that get mentioned to us from HR executives and operations executives is, why does our employee survey say that our employees think that we don't invest enough in them in terms of their development? And usually what those HR people are really focused on is the fact that, hey, we did some forklift training, we did some safety training, we did a seminar on X, Y, or Z, and the people don't seem to acknowledge that in the employee survey. And it's because you're taking a very narrow view of what development is from an employee perspective. But let me go a little big picture. I'm going to be doing some drawings. So if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you might want to check out our LinkedIn page or our YouTube page. And our YouTube page is at unique.leadership. And you can also see the blog post that we've created on today's subject. So I'm not going to do a lot of drawing, but I'll try to describe it in an audio format. So what I've got here is the model of decision-making waste. This is our latest, or one of our latest models. And basically, I'll describe the model, and then I'm going to focus on development, because it's one of the ways that you combat decision-making waste in your organization. So on the left of my diagram, for those that are just listening, it just got a traditional org chart, right? Where you've got a plant manager at the top, and you've got probably a production or operations manager, you've got a maintenance, you might have a supply chain, you might have quality, you might have HR, for example, and then below them would be supervisors and then frontline team members. Now, decision-making waste says that every time I have a more senior person, like a plant manager, doing the work that the management team should do, that the supervisors could do, or even the employees could do, that's decision-making waste. And in a lot of organizations, these people end up making decisions or solving problems that ideally should be taken care of one or two levels lower. So let's tie this in with development. The solution that we need in terms of counteracting this is really a degree of empowerment, and development. And instead of thinking it in terms of formalized training sessions that you're running inside your company, although those are still helpful, what we're really talking about is, how are you extracting the maximum capability from these frontline workers? Because in the decision-making waste model, we want the people closest to the work to run the business. The people in the middle of the organization, the managers, should be focused on improving the business. And the senior leaders should really be focused on growing the business. So it's run at the front line, improve at the middle, and grow at the top. And by grow, we don't necessarily mean you're hunting new customers, although that might be part of your mandate. It's also just to create capacity. In fact, if your operation is not becoming twice as efficient every 5 to 7 years, something is not going well. Okay? Your organization should be able to handle potentially double the business it does now without necessarily having to add capital and people. Now, for some of you, I've just blown your minds with that concept, because you're thinking, how could you double your business and not add more capital equipment and not add more employees? Well, honestly, if you look at most CI and lean initiatives, you actually need that to happen anyway. You're already probably growing. If you look at the number of people you have today delivering the kind of product volume that you do now, it probably has doubled over the last 5 to 7 years. In some companies that are still growing their market share in their business, they just take on more and more business without adding more and more production facilities. If you're in a more mature business, you're basically allowing for some of your plants to become redundant over time. So we had one client where they're basically becoming redundant because they're getting more efficient, and so they're closing a facility every 18 months because they just don't need that extra footprint because they've made their existing operations so efficient. Well, how does this tie back into development? Well, I think instead of trying to move the metric on this one survey question from your employee satisfaction survey, you should really consider, how do you make or equip the people at the front line of your business to solve, and I'm going to draw here the 80-20 rule, right? Which is the Pareto principle. So I want everyone in the organization to be able to handle 80%, at least 80% of what they might face on a typical day without having to necessarily go to their manager to seek clarification, information, or to lob that, the expression, there was a book written by the Blanchard organization called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And in the story, basically, that everyone who comes into your office, they want to drop their monkey off in the office. Well, you can imagine at the end of a day when you've got 12 monkeys in your office, it's going to get pretty mucky there because monkeys like to fling stuff around that's kind of stinky and messy. So you don't want to take people's monkeys off of them. You want them to be able to handle their own monkeys. And in this case, it's about handling the problems that are applicable for what their role is in the organization. Okay, so in the case of frontline employees, they should be able to do troubleshooting and problem solving without, in some cases, even involving their supervisor. Because I'm taking valuable supervisory time when somebody may have been running a machine and knows how to run it better than anyone else anyway. Why are they having to involve their supervisor? Just think what happens when we end up taking a person who's not closest to the work and we put a problem on their desk. Usually if they're in a leadership role, they've been experienced and they're knowledgeable, but they don't have firsthand knowledge of what's happening at that particular moment. So they're making a decision based on partial information without necessarily being there to fix it. And meanwhile, think about how that employee feels knowing that every time they have a problem, they have to essentially bring it to their boss to solve. It's demoralizing. Instead, what employees want to know is, are you going to develop me as a technician, as a problem solver? Are you going to make it so that I can run my part of the business successfully? Because that really meets the top motivational needs that we all have. We all want, according to Dan Pink's book, Drive, we all need autonomy, the freedom, to make decisions in our own little sandbox, our own area of responsibility. We want mastery. We want to get better at things and do our jobs well. And then we want purpose. We want to know that what we're doing is making a difference. So if I basically make every employee come up to their supervisor and their supervisors are throwing problems on their manager's desk, I'm basically demotivating the organization. If I want my employee satisfaction scores to go up, I want to be developing people to be as capable as they can be in their domain, in their area of expertise, so that they can help us run the business better. And just think of how much extra time you'll have if you're not solving the problems and making the decisions that really should have been solved 1 or 2 levels lower in the organization. Now, if you're curious, of course, we help employees, or we help companies do this, employers do this. We do it through equipping frontline leaders to be more effective. We do it through workshops on how to make sure your employees are getting the proper on-the-job training that they need to increase their capability. And then we work at the senior levels with a site leader development program, which is helping the plant managers understand how they can unlock higher value activities and focus at their level instead of them constantly running down to make sure the day's production is being met and shipped to customers. So if this is something that interests you, of course, you should be reaching out to us, and you can do that through our website at uniquedevelopment.com. Let's have a conversation, and let's make sure we're talking about the truth here. Let's be transparent and see whether your organization can benefit from developing the people closest to the work so that they're more capable, freeing up the time of your managers and supervisors so that they can do higher value work. And in that way, not only will your organization be successful, but your motivation and engagement can reach all-time highs. I look forward to our discussion.